Hi, I'm Rev Kymmi.
And I'm Dr. G, and this is Season 1, Episode 13, Orrin and Orson West, the tipster behind the scenes.
And I am professionally a litigation and trial paralegal.
And I am a university professor and a forensic victimologist.
And we're both also ordained Christian reverends.
This is a terribly troubling case. Once again, it involves two precious young children, and I've personally found it very disturbing, especially after we looked at Harmony Montgomery's case, and it just absolutely blows my mind how evil some parents and step-parents can be to such innocent and helpless little children.
Yeah, this episode is very hard for me. I usually stay away from any case concerning children. However, my friend Jim contacted me. He lives out near Palmdale area. And, you know, at the time in January 2021, he contacted me and said, these two little toddlers are missing. Please, Kim, can you help, give the police information with your prophetic gifts of what happened to the children and where they are? And so that's how I got pulled into it. But he begged me because I really stay away with anything concerning children. It's too hard on me. I cry.
Yes, and I've worked with you on this case over the last year or so, and I've heard you talk to me and explain to me what God is revealing to you over the phone, and I've read the emails that you've sent forward, and you and I drove out there and looked at the site, and we walked around and we dug in the dirt to see how easy it would be and how quickly I could dig a hole. And everything that had been revealed to you was so plausible and right there. And it was so tearing at the heart. I do not envy you for this gift. There's so many gifts of the Holy Spirit one could have, but the way you've described it to me, describe to our listeners how you see this. Because we think about paranormal gifts, and this is completely not in that context. You're not a medium. You don't speak to the dead. You don't see dead walking around. How does this gift reveal itself to you?
And I'm not a psychic. Okay. I'm a ordained Christian reverend. I have ministry gifts, the prophetic, and they so happen to work on missing person cases. So I have impressions, which I call visions, a seer, and I also work what people call remote viewing, which I've used a lot on cases. You can listen to the other episodes. Mm-hmm. But I also have rarely prophetic dreams in which God gave me not only the prophetic visions when I was awake, but also a prophetic dream while I was asleep, which you guys will hear about soon.
Yes, and the fact that you had a prophetic dream in this particular case really made it unique, wasn't it?
Yeah, it made it really clear, and it reminded me of that this really, God's upset. He's actually wanting me to help, not just my friend Jim. Mm-hmm. And it reminds me of the Bible verse, in the book of Genesis 4:9. It says, "Then the Lord said to Cain, 'Where is Abel your brother?' He said, 'I don't know. Am I my brother's keeper?'" God cares. God doesn't want people to murder other people.
Yeah.
And which leads into this case.
Yes, and God, truly, God the Father, Jesus, they love children. And David wrote about this in Psalm 127, verse 3. This is the New International Version. Children are a heritage from the Lord, offspring, a reward from Him. And then in Matthew chapter 19, verse 14, English Standard Version, Jesus says, "Let the little children come to me, and do not hinder them, for to such belongs the kingdom of heaven." Children are precious in the sight of God, and they should be precious in the sight of parents, uncles, aunts, brothers, sisters, and even if they're not your children. This case was, it really moved me as well. So let's get into it. This case involves Orrin West and his brother Orson West. At the time of their deaths, Orrin was 4 years old and Orson was 3 years old. They were born, Orrin was born Sincere Pettis, and Orson was born Classic Pettis. And they were adopted out. Their biological parents had some difficulties, and the children were removed from their custody and then adopted out. And they were adopted by Trezell Philip West and Jacqueline Gabrielle West, who at the time of the children's disappearance were 34 and 31 years old, respectively. The West, I might note, also had, at the time, 2 other biological children, their own children, and 2 other adopted children. They had lived at numerous addresses, if you do a background search, but most recently in September 2020, they lived in Bakersfield, California, and moved to California City, California, which is about 65 miles, center of mass from city to city, about 65 miles to the east. So, what happened? On Monday, December 21st, 2020, the sun was setting, the temperatures were dropping. From every record I can find, it was about 30 degrees Fahrenheit that night, so it's extremely nippy out. Trezell West said that his wife Jacqueline was inside wrapping Christmas presents, and you want to keep that stuff secret from the kiddies. So they had Orrin and Orson out on the back patio in the backyard. They had a pretty good-sized backyard. They had a house. They had moved from an apartment. Now they had a house. And the kids were out there playing with chalk. Meanwhile, Trezell was at the back gate in the far back of the property. He had it open, and he was bringing wood in and out for the fireplace or whatnot. And he decided he needed to take a break. He went into the house briefly and left Orrin and Orson outside, as he said, playing with chalk on the back patio. When he came back out, he noticed that the children were gone. So, per his testimony, he made a frantic search very quickly for the children and could not find them. And that's when he called 911. So he made this frantic search of the neighborhood, and having been out there, and if you know where it's at, you can look at Google. It's not like you've got a place to hide. There isn't a ditch and bushes, and it's pretty wide open. So had he stepped out of that back gate and looked around the neighborhood, unless you were looking for a mouse, I think it'd be pretty doggone hard to hide out there. A 3-foot tall child. So this is where it starts to get interesting. If you look at the newspapers and look at police reports and things like that, you'll find that volunteers searched the area, and they even brought in canines, tracking dogs, and they came up empty. I remember reading one article said that when they did bring in dogs again later on, the dogs found the boy's scent all over the inside the house, but never found their scent leaving the yard. So they sent out news and a description of the boys. The very next morning, the community came together for its first massive ground search, like we did in the Army, shoulder to shoulder, or double arm interval, whatever you want to call it. And they went out and they searched and searched and searched and found nothing. Absolutely amazing. What else happened during that search, Kymmi?
I do know that they actually went to a nearby hotel.
Oh.
Thinking about, the kids were, snatched.
Oh.
And maybe trafficked, for sexual things. And so they went into hotels and searched. And, of course, found nothing. I know that they would, tore the house apart, tore the backyard apart. Searched
they
everywhere.
dug it up. They dug up the backyard. Yep.
Yeah.
And they had a van that was towed, too. The
Okay.
family van, yeah.
Yeah, I remember prophetically talking about a van.
Oh, yeah.
Which they'll hear, you guys will hear about what I said to the police. Prophetic tip to them.
Yeah. Now, I tell you, folks, the smiley face cases that I've worked on and a bunch of other missing persons cases that families have called me in on and my colleagues from New York, too often, unfortunately, and a lot of times it comes down to staffing. How many officers do we have available to put in the field, and or budgets, and occasionally resources. But when I started looking at this case, local law enforcement cannot be faulted. I mean, they were on this right now. The children were reported missing on December 21st, 2020. And by Tuesday, December 29th, 2020, they were starting to suspect that there might be some foul play there, and that's because they kept searching and couldn't find anything. The second search of the West's home in California City was conducted, and they identified stuff and seized it, but nothing was really found. And if you start looking at updates and stuff of every effort that they did, it's phenomenal. They had about 50 officers involved plus FBI agents, okay, in these searches at different times. You jump all the way up to June 1st, 2021, and I'm going to read this. This is actually from a local news agency up there. Police gave an update detailing efforts that had been made to locate Orrin and Orson. In 2020, investigators' initial search efforts were aided by a helicopter with infrared, and I put, FLIR in here, forward-looking infrared, and I've always wondered why somebody goes missing, even if they fell down, got knocked out, or even if they were deceased, if you went out right away, they're still warmer than the ground. So that infrared would find them. I mean, I've seen photographs, even out here in footage on the local news where they use a helicopter with FLIR and they find the weapon that the perp just threw into the bushes, So to find a body, and these
That's
guys...
pretty amazing.
Yeah, these guys did. They put the helicopter out there. I've never heard of that. And they searched a 5-mile perimeter. I mean, that's crazy. At one point, they had, by January 1st, 2021, now keep in mind, these young guys have only been missing now for 6 months. Police had already executed 44 search warrants, and 83 people had been interviewed, and 170 items seized. They had done mass searches in 16 areas and had received over 200 tips. That's just amazing. I mean, no one can fault the police. They went out and they looked and they looked and they looked. So now what we have is, of course, they're really starting to suspect some foul play out there. And now if you look at online, you will find the indictment. And some of these, I found the original indictment and then the amended indictment. And the most recent one, they're now saying that they believe that Trezell West was responsible for the death of Orrin and Orson sometime between September 1st and September 11th. Now, keep in mind, he did not report them missing until December 21st, 2020. That's 3 months later. So there's a lot going on there. There's a lot of actors involved there. Now, before I go over the rest of the facts of the case, I would like Kymmi to share what God shared through her and the prophetic gift of prophecy, because all of this prophetic word happened before the evidence that I'm going to talk about was discovered and the rest of the case developed. So, Rev Kymmi, what did God tell you about these poor? Boy, it almost makes me want to choke up when I think of their precious little faces. These poor little boys.
Yeah, it's truly very disturbing for sure. I reached out to the lead detective over at California City Police Department by email, and to let him know who I am, my background, my reference, as well as the fact that, I was going to go out there, go to the premises of their house where they were last seen, where they were reported missing. And like I said, my friend Jim, who lives out there, or did, he passed. He had a heart attack last year. But he had begged me to please help the toddlers because they were missing. And I did not hear about the case. But so I promised him I would help. And so I approached the police by email, told them who I was, that I'm gifted in prophetic gifts and stuff, ministry gifts. So I told them I was headed out there on January 5th, 2021 on the premises, on the street, down the street from where the Wests resided in California City.
Yes, and that was only like 15 days after the kids had been reported missing.
Yeah, I guess Jim got on it real fast.
Yeah, so about all there was in the newspaper is these boys are missing and we're looking for them.
Yeah, I didn't hear about it. But
I mean, we didn't know who lived where, how many kids the West had or any of that. It was that new still.
I knew nothing about the case.
Yeah.
Literally nothing.
Yeah.
So I drove out to California City and parked down the street from their house, from the West's house. Okay. And so, I pray and I listen to worship music, and that's how I get my information from God. And so in my email to the lead detective on their case at California City Police Department, here's what I wrote on January 5th, 2021 at 11:06 a.m. I wrote, with my prophetic gifts, I see, and then I have in parentheses, God always shows me in part. As it's stated in the Bible, we prophesy in part and we know in part. And that's in Acts 2. You guys can Google it and see. So I wrote, number 1, you will solve this case, so don't stop. And of course you wouldn't. God shows me you will have a conclusion. There will be some tangible evidence found and incriminating evidence. So heads up, dig for it. I don't know what it is, but maybe something like a pillow case or something similar. You're going to find a little blood or DNA, something similar, I say, which is like DNA. Number 3, arrests will be made. Number 4, eventually we'll find out the whereabouts, alive or dead, of the children. And I said, I think that they're dead, but I'm not 100%. I still believe the adoptive parents did something. I did not get a hit with my gifts. They ever exited via the backyard gates. You know how he said that, right? Mm-hmm. They're playing in the backyard and they slipped out the gates. Well, with my gifts, I don't see that occurred at all. I had no detection whatsoever. But I do get a hit exit from inside the house via the garage to a vehicle that you probably have. And then I'm inquiring, did a cadaver dog, smell such and such, inside the house. I said, common sense. I see they left from inside the house to the garage. And I wasn't sure if they're alive or dead, but I was strongly sensing dead. And I said that my finger still points to the adoptive parents. Sorry, my throat's a little dry. Common sense. Sitting here in my car down the street from their house, I witnessed 2 gates to exit from the backyard. Now, if adopted dad was moving logs as alleged, then he would have for sure seen a person or a vehicle abduct the children. So no way could a person get away with it, unless I am not seeing an additional gate from the street. How? Gate fence in back only. So finger points to adoptive parents. My prophetic gifts also point to the adoptive parents. Then I say that I'm, so sorry I cannot verify more than this. I can't say what I am not shown. Again, I do not want to mislead you. So surprisingly, I go home, guys, and I have a prophetic dream on the case.
And
from
that's
God.
What really made this unique, right?
Yeah, it's happened before only once. I was helping a different law enforcement agency on another case. And I was doing recovery, trying to find remains of a human being. And God gave me a prophetic dream about that, which came to pass. Now, I go home, guys, and I go to sleep. I'm going to try to find that email so I can read it.
So now we're talking, this is the night of January 5th, 2021, right?
Right. I go home and I go to sleep, and I think I'm done, right? I help the police, and that's all I can do. I'm not going to add to it. I'm not going to delete information. That's all I got, and that's all I'm going to say. And I don't want to mislead them, right? They're going to waste their time and waste their money and create confusion, etc., right? So you don't add to it and you don't delete information. I just deliver it as God shows me. So I go to sleep. Now it's Wednesday. I do another email, guys. Wednesday, January 6th, 2021. At 3:44 a.m. I email the lead detective on their case at California City Police Department. And I say, rarely do I get prophetic dreams from God. I just had one and I just woke up. So that's why it's at 3:44 a.m. I'm emailing him. God showed me the 2 boys in a separate bed alive. One was awake under the covers, in a dark room, moving around under the covers. Then the next scene, God showed me a tall building, an apartment building. Then that building disappeared. Then all of a sudden, I saw an open, wide field. It's barren field. Nothing's around. Then the prophetic dream disappeared. So, if you guys don't know the Bible, there's a story in there that Pharaoh God gave Pharaoh a dream, a warning dream, and he could not understand it. He hunted for somebody to be able to interpret his dream, and he found Joseph, who was able to do it. So, my point is, guys, it's very difficult, but I've had them many times from my personal life. Only twice now did I have a prophetic dream on missing person case. So I was getting to the point where I was getting good at actually interpreting, but I needed to pray and ask God what it meant. And I blatantly told the police that this is hard, it's hard to do, and that I needed to pray to understand what it meant. So God gave me, let me find that email, because I wrote the police again.
Yeah.
Okay, here we go. So it's the same day. This is January 6, 2021. Now it's 6:40 a.m. Looks like I was up since 3:30, huh? Yeah. Okay, so I say, oh, this is a email to the lead detective at California City Police Department. Oh my goodness. God just dropped in my spirit the understanding of the first scene in my prophetic dream of seeing the West boy sleeping in a dark room under bed covers. Oh my God. God revealed sleeping means dead. That's right. He does refer to people sleeping as dead in the Bible. So he is telling me the West boys are sleeping. And then I have in parentheses, dead. In darkness, meaning sin, in secret and hidden, and under covers, being kept in secret, intentionally being covered up. I believe you guys need to lay into and grill the adoptive parents. They have had to have murdered intentionally or unintentionally these two boys. I could see unintentionally of one boy, but two? Most likely not. Praying for you all for justice. I think they will cave eventually with hard, expert interrogation by a cop who is known for it. Separate them and grill them. Lady is weaker than the male. Maybe with proper grilling, hard, she may be the one to crack. God bless, Rev Kymmi. So, the Bible does. So God was saying, let me explain it a little more. This, you guys, I can still see this prophetic dream today. I am haunted and seeing this gorgeous little boy, Orrin West, is the one that I saw up close in this dream. And guys, it's like watching TV. It's clear and in color. Okay? And this is so upsetting. I'm going to get through this. He was lying down in bed. He had covers over him up to his chest. And he was trying desperately to get out of bed. But the covers were holding him down and preventing him from getting out of bed, from being able to sit up in bed. So if we logically think to interpret this dream from God, God is trying, he's upset to give me a prophetic dream about this. Because remember, my interpretation, my prophetic analysis, I said, I believe they're dead, but I'm not 100%. Well, I go home and go to bed. God's given me the 100% hit on this information that the boys are dead. So, sadly, if sleeping is dead, okay, now the boys are struggling to get up, right? Or it was Orrin West. He's trying to get up. He's trying to get out of the bed, and he can't. He's forced to what? To sleep. Now, if you're forced to sleep, that means you're murdered and dead. To be forced to sleep, right? Which is forced to die, would be called murder.
Yeah.
So that's how I was able to interpret it. And it is just so upsetting. So I said, in the remainder of the dream, they used to live in the apartment. Remember, God showed me the next scene was an apartment building, right? Then the next scene, he showed me an open dirt field, right? So you have to use some logic. So God is saying they went from the apartment to the open fields. So if a dream ended in that new vicinity, the field out in California City, then it means that they died, they were murdered in California City. Right?
Yeah, and if I remember when we drove out there, that city gave me such a weird feeling. I'm like, something's not right about this town. There's all these roads, and there's no houses, and so I researched it, and it turns out there was these big plans for this city, and it just, due to circumstances, it never happened. And so, like, when you go to the home where this occurred, it's at the edge of the city. And you literally, I mean, there's a big empty lot to the west of it. There's an even bigger empty space to the east of it. And then on the other side of the street, it's flat open desert for as far as you can see. And so when you told me that dream, that made perfect sense to me. You were seeing them in the urban environment, the apartment, going to this very, very open spaced residential area at the edge of the desert. I mean, it made perfect sense.
And then if you think about it, God's involved in this. Okay, not only through me praying and asking and seeking for truth, right, while I was in my car, but when I went home, he shows me so that we all absolutely know what happened to the boys. Yeah. And it reminds me of the Bible verse that I read. God is saying, where's your brother? Yeah. This is God's upset. And he knows I'm giving tips to the police with using my prophetic gifts.
Yeah.
So,
and if Cain and Abel were each other's keeper, then certainly a parent is the keeper of their child, whether adoptive or biological.
Yeah, so God's upset.
Now right? almost a whole week goes by, and the next prophetic tip that you forward to law enforcement is on January 12th, 2021. What did God reveal this time through the prophetic word?
Well, I could see him on TV or online. I think it was TV. I'm not sure if it was social media. But anyway, I see them searching the California City House, in which they have to. If I was a police officer, I'd have to too, right? You got to check out family members. You got to check, there's a lot of logical things we'd all need to do. But I am trying to help them. And so I said, God is showing me, this is an email back to the lead detective at California City. I said, God is showing me that the chief is searching over and over inside the house. That his cop dog just doesn't reflect the kids left in the house. But God is showing me, because he was searching it high and low the house, right? And digging in the backyard. I said, but God is showing me your dog isn't detecting that the kids were carried out of the house and placed in a white van. It's very interesting. This is January 12, 2021. There's no mention of a white van until later on. Well, this affirms what God is showing me, right? The van exited the driveway and turns to the right. I believe it didn't go too far. Maybe because they were carried. The dog doesn't track well the house to the garage to exit. Not sure. Did you test the kids' pillows and sheets yet? Food for thought.
Yeah, I remember the first time, and I had this in the back of my head. I seen this email, and I think it was end of June, early part of July this year, 2022. And I was looking online for updates, and I came across some television station that had old footage from when they were there, and what was sitting in the driveway? A white van. And I'm like, I wonder if that's the families or, I don't think it was the reporter's van because it didn't say, TV, whatever, NBC, ABC, CBS, Fox. It didn't say nothing like that. On the side, it was just plain old white vehicle. And I'm thinking, as soon as I saw that, this email that you sent popped back into my head, and I'm like, I'll bet that's the white van that God showed you.
Yeah. It was. Absolutely.
Yeah. So another 10 days go by, and God revealed yet another piece of prophetic word to you. What was that?
Which one are you talking about?
This one here on January 22nd, 2021. And I'm going to emphasize that, 2021, okay. January.
Yeah, God had showed me with prophetic visions that that there was going to be arrest, that I saw the adoptive dad, in the back of a squad car arrested. So I do remember reaching out to and telling that to Bakersfield Police Department, because they eventually took over the case. Mm-hmm. So when I'm first greeting them, and when they took over, and making sure that they knew that God gave me a prophetic dream, I'm telling them about that they're dead, they've been murdered, and by the adoptive parents, and please don't trust the parents, don't, they're really good at their game, don't do that, don't listen to them. And I wanted to make sure that they knew that information I had told California City. So, but that I had also told them, I don't know if I could find, yeah, here it is. When I'm telling them this information to try to catch them up, Bakersfield Police Department wrote me back, "Good morning, Kymmi. Thank you for your message. I've sent the information to the lead, on the West case, the sergeant." And I said, "Awesome. I wasn't sure if you would have seen that. Thank you. They will eventually be found. We'll find out what happened to them. And the adoptive dad will be arrested for doing this horrible crime. Keep up the good work. Praying for you all. God bless." And they said, "Thank you so much." And that was sent to them on March. Where'd it go? I think it was in March. What was it? March 11th? I'm not seeing the date here. Anyway.
Oh, there's a later one.
Yeah, it was March 11th, 2021. Yeah.
Yeah, 8:36 a.m.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right.
So,
anything else?
I just wanted to make sure Bakersfield knew that they were in the loop about this information, and not to trust the adoptive parents, with whatever they were saying to them.
Okay. All right, folks. So, make sure you keep track of this timeline.
Well, they need to make sure to wait for it. We get involved on the recovery, guys, in collaboration or in communication with the lead detective over at the Bakersfield Police Department. So you want to wait for that tip information.
Yeah. So January 5th, you start feeding prophetic word tip information directly to law enforcement, and that's in 2021. And that continues all the way through March, on and off. And passing the information to both California City police chief, as well as the chief over in Bakersfield, and the lead detectives. Okay, so here we go. Along comes Tuesday, March 1st, a whole year later, 14 months after you first tipped them, and a whole year after you have repeatedly said
he's going to be arrested.
The adoptive father will be arrested.
And the parents did it, the adoptive
March
parents.
1st, 2022. A grand jury indicted Trezell and Jacqueline West on 2 counts of second-degree murder, 2 counts of child cruelty, and falsely reporting an emergency. They were arrested and held without bail. And at the time, if you go check out Kern County Jail and look for their inmate search, it says that the next hearing is January 20th, 2023 for both of them, Trezell Philip West and Jacqueline Gabriella West. Now, keeping with the timeline, Friday, June 10th, 2022, the adoptive parents of Orson and Orrin West were arraigned on new charges. So they had the previous charges, now they've come back, and the new charges are going to supersede the old ones. This is where it gets very interesting. Trezell and Jacqueline were arrested in March on suspicion of killing Orrin and Orson, but now they face a total of 7 charges. The grand jury this time returned a superseding indictment that included new charges, and this is what they were charged for. 2 counts of second-degree murder, 2 counts of child cruelty, falsely reporting an emergency, involuntary manslaughter, and conspiracy. And among those charges, remember I said this is interesting, they had 2 of their own biological children and 2 additional adoptive children. So there were 6 kids in the house. Somebody had to have seen something, right? Well, among the charges against the Wests in this new allegation is that they induced a minor to assist in committing the crime and suggested that at least one of the children witnessed what had happened and will be called to testify. Very, very interesting.
It's really sad.
Yeah.
So,
and do you remember what was that you said about the pillowcases? 14 months. I mean, you told them
that
this
there
back
would be,
in what, January
I said there would be
2021.
DNA
right?
found, yes.
And guess what came out in the media just recently, along with the stories about all these new indictments and charges? It says one of Jacqueline West's attorneys, I'm reading from a newspaper quotation here, one of Jacqueline West's attorneys said they had received DNA evidence and body camera footage and were awaiting the cell phone and computer evidence. They had asked for the trial to be delayed, and the judge, Lua, did grant that postponement over the objection of the West, finding it necessary for defense attorneys to properly prepare. So it sounds like...
So that's why it got pushed to January 2023?
It sounds like, just like your prophetic word had told them. Mm-hmm. They found all that evidence that you said they would find. Mm-hmm. They arrested the person and persons that you said they would arrest. This case will go to trial. It seems that they likely do have enough evidence.
Yes. And
they will likely get a conviction. Now, the only thing we can pray for, folks, please get down on your knees and pray for these children that their bodies will be found, so that...
Well, you and I worked that. We worked the recovery to recover their bodies, to locate, in communication with the lead detective on the West case at Bakersfield Police Department. And, they appreciated our help to go out to California City to determine, where their bodies are. And I believe that absolutely 100% I know where they're at. And I told the police. So I am not going to disclose that information.
Yeah.
However, I can share, because, this is it's still active investigation, especially concerning the recovery, right? And they're all gagged under a gag order. They have not trespassed, against that gag order with me or anything. They've never told me details of their police file. They shouldn't, and they have not ever. So we got involved, like I said, with on July 25th, 2022, for recovery purposes. We drove out, my Dr. G and I drove out to California City to prophetically determine where their bodies are. And so when I'm driving out, Dr. G was driving the car and I was in the passenger seat and taking notes prophetically with what I was receiving. We're going out, guys, just for recovery purposes. However, I picked up a lot of information. God told me a lot of details and information concerning this case. So I wrote it to the lead detective and gave him a heads up on it. So here's what I wrote. Note, I know nothing about the facts in court, nor am I following the judicial case. I do not know the details of the police file at California City Police, nor Bakersfield Police Department. I have not done research, nor know the vehicle of the West at the time of the murders, other than my gifts, right? The white van, I had no idea. I interviewed no one. I relied solely on my Christian Reverend ministry prophetic gifts. And so I said, believe it or not, this all stems from the boys being rambunctious, and that's in quotes, per adoptive dad. This is the word God gave me in quotes. Adoptive dad absolutely could not stand how the boys were out of hand with their behavior. Now that is his perspective. God shows me these boys were acting normal like toddler boys do. The adoptive dad could not handle them, as such was abusive to them, and it was child abuse. This included yelling at them, being unreasonable to them by punishing them. The punishment did not match their alleged crimes of being normal toddler boys. God showed me, and I'm doing bullets, I have the perspective of one of the toddler boys. I see abuse occurred at least once in a room that has dark wood paneling, like the old school brown wood paneling on a wall. They may have even been placed in a closet as part of their punishment. Cruel things happened to them as part of their punishment, leading to their deaths. Adoptive dad would yell at them often. He acted like he hated them. He's very unreasonable. They died inside the house in California City. Adoptive mom was mean too. Cruelty and abuse killed the boys. Now I just want to do a sidebar here. I want you to know that later on we find these indictments. We did not see these court documents or anything prior to doing this email to the detective. Okay, I just want to say that. I had nothing. This is all from God. The boys would be crying often. The adoptive dad is the ringleader. I kept seeing a white van that adopted dad used to transport their dead bodies. And I cannot see if the adoptive mom is in the car too with other kids. I just see him with the van stopped. I feel that he drove. I'm not gonna say that because that's information I gave to the police concerning where their bodies are. I don't want to do that. I see the adoptive parents would argue a lot after the death of the boys. I see that there was at least one occasion of the adoptive parents even getting physical with one another. They were fighting over the death of the boys, what to do and covering up the issue. It was not a surprise to me when they broke up after calling the police stating the boys escaped from the backyard. When adoptive dad drove his car after calling the police, he was acting. It was pure acting. He pretended to go search for the boys, but only going a little bit to look like he's driving down the street. That way, if he had a lie detector test, he would pass and look good, wouldn't he? Adoptive dad really planned out the cover-up quite well, so he thought. I feel they snapped by their abuse, and as such killed them. He couldn't control himself.
Yeah.
And they go on about a little bit more about cadaver dogs and the white van. I hope you have the white van, and can you get, cadaver dogs and do and search this area. So I'm not going to read those things. So it's a very, very sad case.
Yeah. I don't know what else to say about it. It looks like we're finally going to get some justice for these young boys and for their biological parents who are suffering terribly at the death of their children. I think that's all I can say.
Yeah. We should take just a couple seconds just to have a, silence, and let's just think of the boys.
Yeah.
And we hope and pray that Orrin and Orson West, rest in peace.
Yeah. And that concludes episode 13 for us. Orrin and Orson West from California City, California. And thank you for listening to us. And
we hope you join us again on the next episode.
Yeah.
God bless you. Bye-bye.